This is Mrs. Leffers. This is Romeo and Juliet, Act 2, Scene 3. So they're in Friar Lawrence's cell in the monastery. So this is kind of like his living quarters. And a friar he would be a priest, like a religious person. So, and Romeo knows him. And everybody would have been Catholic because it's Italy. So they're all the same, like he and Juliet would have been the same religion. Romeo goes from Capulet's garden to the monastery. That's where monks live or friars live, where Friar Lawrence lives. The friar knows Romeo well and often gives him advice. As the scene begins, Friar Lawrence is gathering herbs in the early morning. He talks of good and bad uses for herbs, so this might be a little bit of foreshadowing. Keep this in mind since Friar Lawrence's skill at mixing herbs becomes important later in the play. Romeo tells the friar that he loves Juliet and wants to marry her. The friar is amazed that Romeo's forgotten completely about Rosalind, because up until this point, he's clearly been talking to the friar about Rosalind. And so now Friar's like, what? Who? You wanna... Romeo, like, what are you talking about, crazy? The friar is amazed, like I said, let's see here. Eventually, however, he agrees to marry Romeo and Juliet, hoping that the marriage will end the feud between their two families, because he knows about the feud and the fact that everyone's like in trouble for hurting each other. All right, and if Catholic priests and monks are considered, they're called father. So that's the title. This guy is not Romeo's actual father, but he may be called father. Friar Lawrence. The gray-eyed morn smiles on the frowning night, checkering the eastern clouds with streaks of light, and flecked darkness like a drunkard reels from forth day's path and Titan's fiery wheels. Now, ere the sun advance his burning eye, the day to cheer and night's dank dew to dry, I must upfill this osier cage of ours with baleful weeds and precious juiced flowers. The earth that's nature's mother is her tomb. What is her burying grave? That is her womb. And from her womb children of divers kind we sucking on her natural bosom find, many for many virtues excellent, none but for some, and yet all different. Oh, nickel is the powerful grace that lies in plants, herbs, stones, and their true qualities, for not so vile that on the earth doth live, but to the earth some special good doth give, nor aught so good, but strained from that fair use, revolts from true birth, stumbling on abuse. Virtue itself turns vice, being misapplied, and vice sometimes by action dignified. Within the infant rind of this small flower, poison hath residence, and medicine power. For this, being smelt with that part, cheers each part. Being tasted, slays all senses with the heart. Two such opposed kings encamp them still in man, as well as herbs, grace and rude will. And where the worser is predominant, full soon the canker death eats up that plant. So he's talking about the circle of life, but then he also goes into talking about like the dark side and the force, basically, like good versus evil, and how not only do all humans have both good and evil, but so do plants a lot of times. So he's holding onto a little flower, and he says when you smell it, it's wonderful, it's beautiful, it's amazing. If you eat it, you die. So he's like, certain things can be beautiful in some regard, but very dangerous in others. And he's clearly also like the theme of Romeo and Juliet comes through in that line. Romeo, good morrow, father. Friar Lawrence, Benedicite. I don't know how to pronounce that. Benedicite. Oh, sorry. Which means God bless you. What early tongue so sweet saluteth me? Young son, it argues a distempered head, so soon to bid good morrow to thy bed. Care keeps his watch in every old man's eye, and where care lodges, sleep will never lie. But where unbruised youth with unstuffed brain doth couch his limbs, there golden sleep doth reign. Therefore thy earliness doth me assure thou art abrowsed with some distemperature. Or if not so, then here I hit it right. Our Romeo hath not been in bed tonight. He's like, Romeo, it's way too early for you to like be waking up as a teenager. Also, we know you've been shutting yourself in your room and being really melodramatic lately. My guess is you didn't wake up this early. You've stayed up all night and you've come to see me because you know I'm going to be awake. Romeo, that last is true. The sweeter rest was mine. Friar Lawrence, God pardon sin. Wast thou with Rosalind? So he's like thinking he was up all night doing something naughty and asking if he was with Rosalind. Romeo, with Rosalind, my ghostly father, no. I have forgot that name, and that name's woe. Friar Lawrence, that's my good son. But where hast thou been then? Romeo, I'll tell thee ere thou ask it me again. I have been feasting with mine enemy, where on a sudden one hath wounded me. That's by me wounded. Both our remedies within thy help and holy psychic lies. I bear no hatred, blessed man, for lo, my intercession likewise steads my foe. So he's not really getting to his point. He's like, I've dined with my enemy, and I'm so much better than this feud. And Friar Lawrence is like, what? Dude, I don't know what you're talking about. Just tell me. Friar Lawrence, be plain, good son, and homely in thy drift. Riddling confession finds but riddling shrift. He's like, if you came here to make confession, like to confess your sins, but you're not really telling me what those sins are, I can't help you. Romeo, then plainly know my heart's dear love is set on the fair daughter of rich Capulet. As mine on hers, so hers is set on mine. And all combined, save what thou must combine by holy marriage. When and where and how we met, we wooed and made exchange of vow. I'll tell thee as we pass, but this I pray that thou consent to marry us today. So he's like, okay, so I'm in love with Capulet's daughter, and we want you to marry us today. That sounds like a great plan. Friar Lawrence, Holy Saint Francis, what a change is here. Is Rosalind that thou didst love so dear, so soon forsaken? Young men's love then lies, not truly in their hearts, but in their eyes. So he's like, did you just forget about Rosalind? Well, that proves that you don't really know what love is, and you're just after good-looking girls. This is still Friar Lawrence. Jesu Maria, what a deal of brine hath washed thy sallow cheeks for Rosaline. How much salt water thrown away in waste to season love, that of it doth not taste. The sun not yet thy sighs from heaven clears, thy old groans ring yet in mine ancient ears. Lo, here upon thy cheek the stain doth sit of an old tear that is not washed off yet. If e'er thou wast thyself, and these woes thine, thou and these woes were all for Rosaline. And art thou changed? Pronounce this sentence then. Women may fall when there's no strength in men. He's like, Romeo, you still have a tear stain on your cheek that hasn't been washed off yet. I don't know if this is true or not. For Rosaline. He's like, how much salt water have you wasted? How many tears have you cried for Rosaline? And now, Juliet, now you don't even know who this girl is? I don't know, Romeo. Romeo says, thou chidest me oft for loving Rosaline. He's like, you always give me a hard time for loving Rosaline. Friar Lawrence, for doting, not for loving, pupil mine. And so Friar Lawrence says, for having a crush on her, not for loving her, but for not understanding you, she didn't want you. She didn't want to return your love. So I wasn't giving you a hard time for loving, I was just telling you to move on. Romeo, and baddest me bury love. Friar Lawrence, not in a grave to lay one in, another ought to have. Romeo, I pray thee chide not. See whom I love now doth grace for grace and love for love allow. The other did not so. So Romeo's like, this one loves me back. Juliet loves me back. I want to get married to her. The other one didn't love me back. Rosalind didn't love me back. Friar Lawrence, oh, she knew well thy love did read by rote that could not spell. But come, young waverer, come go with me. In one respect I'll thy assistant be. For this alliance may so happy prove to turn your household's rancor to pure love. Romeo, oh, let us hence! I stand on sudden haste. Friar Lawrence, wisely and slow. They stumble that run fast. So, Friar Lawrence is like, I still don't think that you're doing this for the right reasons, but I can see the benefit of marrying a Montague and a Capulet because maybe it will help end this ridiculous feud that is angering everybody in our fair Verona. End of scene 3.